The time now is 5:32. I'd like to start the Silver Lake Regionalization Study Committee meeting for Wednesday, June 18th. In attendance right now, we have Missy Bateman, we have John Williamson, we have Megan Cannon, we have Michael, how do you do
Cowett.
Cowett?
Yep.
All right.
Like Dan.
Michael Cowett, Jim Walters, myself, Jonathan Seelig, and we are joined by our school council online. We are joined by Joe Proul, superintendent online, and school budget officer Sarah Hickey online as well as members from the Collins Center. First off, thank you guys for joining us today. We appreciate your time.
Very welcome.
We'll, I guess, just get right into it. We've shared questions with you folks. So I'll give you guys the floor as to what you'd like us to know and kind of kick this process off.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having us today. Thank you for inviting us to spend this time with you. My name is Sarah Cannon. I am the Director of Municipal Services at the Collins Center. And in terms of what I would like to lay out for you this evening, I'll give you a little bit of background on myself, and then I'll have my colleagues Ann and Bill introduce themselves. And then I want to talk a little bit about the Collins Center so that you all understand our sort of our background, our services, and our approach to projects. And then I'll turn it back over to the committee. And I know Ann and Bill have questions as they start to conceptualize what the project will look like based on what they've heard and what they've seen so far. And of course, the answers that they'll be able to get tonight. So I've been with the Collins Center since 2012. I joined to participate on a data analytics and performance management project for cities and towns. After about 5-6 years, I took over our finance team. And after 6 years of that, I stepped into the role of Director of Municipal Services. And in that position, I oversee all of the consulting and technical assistance that we provide to clients around the Commonwealth and beyond. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to ask Ann and Bill to introduce themselves so you know who you're looking at, and then I'll take back the floor to talk a little bit about the Collins Center.
Ann?
Okay, hi. I'm Ann Wilson. I have been with the Collins Center since 2018 when I retired as superintendent of the Sudbury Public Schools, previously assistant superintendent in Brookline, and principal, assistant principal, teacher in Northern California and Pennsylvania. Typically working on organizational studies and any type of study of districts across the Commonwealth. Happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bill Lupini, and I've been working sort of on and off with Collins since 2017, I believe. I also do some consulting work around educator evaluation, superintendent, principal, collaborative coaching with Rebus Associates. And I spent 25 years as a school superintendent, 18 of those years in Beverly and Brookline, but also some time in Pennsylvania and some time in New Hampshire. The projects I've mainly worked on with Collins have been in regional school districts, districts that were looking at declines in student enrollment and what kinds of strategies they might need to employ as a result of that declining enrollment, mainly in central and western Massachusetts. And like Ann, I'm happy to be here and talk with you more about what you're looking to Collins for assistance with. So thanks for having us.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Ann. So I'm going to give you guys just a quick background on the Collins Center so that you can understand, you know, how we operate. We're a little bit of a unique animal, I think special. And so, you know, and I know that some of you may have heard of us, others may be hearing about us for the first time. So we were actually created back in 2008 by the state legislature and the Executive Office of Administration and Finance. They placed us into the McCormick School at UMass Boston. We have our mission set out in state law, Chapter 75, Section 45, There are 5 components. The most important one, the one that we spend the most of our time on, and the one that's relevant for you all is the top bullet, which is to provide high quality, pragmatic, agile, and affordable fee-for-service technical assistance and consulting on public management issues to public entities. Since 2008, we've completed over 1,200 projects for more than 300 organizations, the vast majority of which are here in the Commonwealth. Most of them are municipalities and school districts, but we have also worked with regional governments. We've worked with state agencies, quasi-governmental entities, and occasionally we do work with nonprofits. We've done a few projects in some of the other New England states, but the bulk of the work that we've done is here in the Commonwealth. We've worked in the smallest communities and the largest community. We've done projects for Gosnold, which has a population of under 100. We've done projects with the city of Boston. We've worked in every single county. We have been all over this state, and we really love it. If you're kind of wondering, well, what kind of organization are you? Because you're at UMass Boston, but you're telling us you do consulting. We really are a consulting organization with a public service mission to help other public sector entities accomplish their own missions. And we have a couple of values that define the type of work we do, the approach to the work that we do. And that is first and foremost that we're practitioner driven. So although we have colleagues at UMass Boston who focus on academic research in public administration and public policy, which is wonderful, and although we all came up through master's and PhD programs, our real goal when we're helping clients on the ground is to make sure that they know that we've been on the ground. We bring that practitioner focus to the work that we do because even the best laid plans, if those plans are devised in an ivory tower or somewhere else, often they don't work on the ground. And what we really want more than anything is for our clients to be successful. We take a really pragmatic approach to the work that we do, which is related to what I just said. And we really focus on what progress can be made. You may not get perfect, but certainly you can make progress towards your goal. And public sector organizations, cities, towns, school districts are always striving to improve. We're also a forward-looking organization. We do not do backward-looking audits to figure out who did what wrong and why did they do it. We're really prefer and maintain that the best way to serve constituents, whether those are students, seniors, veterans, is to look forward and say, how can we make our processes better? How can we make our staff better? How can we make our programs better? We're also very adaptable and collaborative. And the way that looks is that we really want to be a partner to our clients. What we don't do is come in, ask you a bunch of questions, disappear for 4 months, and come back with a big report. Because what we know from leading our own public organizations and being staff and being constituents of public sector organizations is that buy-in is really important. And the process needs to be transparent to those who are participating. They need to understand why they're being asked certain questions. They need to be able to follow progress, and they need to understand how the conclusions came to be. That gives the recommendations a stronger chance of success in our experience. Just a quick few sentences about our structure. So right now we have over 50 employees. 10 of them are full-time and more than 40 of them are part-time. Our part-time staff are really the lifeblood of our organization. And they really fall into 2 categories. First, we have our analysts who provide support on projects. They do things like research, data collection, data analysis, survey development, etc. And often those folks are master's or PhD students at UMass Boston or recent graduates. And then we have our associates, and our associates, Ann and Bill are two of our associates. Our associates are typically retired public sector employees from Massachusetts or the surrounding states. They bring decades of experience in a particular subject, and we're really lucky to have that structure because it does give us the opportunity to bring that real pragmatic approach, practitioner-driven approach to our work. The Collins Center has grown so much since 2008 that we now are structured into practice areas, although we do a lot of cross-practice area teamwork because, as you guys have probably found in your own day-to-day, the public sector challenges that many organizations face are quite complex. They can be impacted by something that seemingly is unrelated. And so it's really important to us that we are able to bring experts from, a variety of different areas to the table and to be able to comprehensively address an issue. Nonetheless, we talk about ourselves as being separated into practice areas, and we currently have 13 practice areas. I'm not going to name them all, but I'll give you a flavor. Really, it runs the gamut. Anything that a municipality does, we also can help with. Anything that whether that's finance, human resources, IT, communications, we really do it all. And we also have quite a busy schools practice, and that's the team where Ann and Bill are based. In terms of process, just so that you all understand sort of the way that we work, because we're part of a state agency, the UMass system, we are able to engage and contract directly with other public sector organizations without having to follow a 30B process. So that's the reference there is Chapter 30B, Section 1(4). And really what that allows us to do is help support our communities that maybe don't have the internal staff capacity to run a robust bid or RFP process, although that's always an option. The way that it looks often is that clients seek us out to find out if we're able to help them solve a problem. Sometimes that comes through our networks. One of our associates will get a call from a former colleague or maybe somebody that they mentored in their career. Sometimes people call me or email me directly, and often we get projects through our relationship with the Division of Local Services, a recommendation from them to a potential client to reach out and find out what we're all about. We do a lot of work that is funded through the Community Compact Best Practices and E&R grant programs. And I think that's how you guys came to reach out to us. So folks will reach out to us and say, here's what our challenge is, here's what our goal is. And if the work is within our wheelhouse, then we start a conversation because we really need to figure out what is the scope of work? What is your desired timeline? What is your budget for the project? And so that can take one or more meetings, phone calls, etc. After which, once we feel we have a sense of what the work is, we will draft a project proposal. And really it defines the scope, it defines the proposed timeline, it shares the budget for the work, and it also lays out our work plan. So the different various tasks that we're going to complete toward that final deliverable. We send that over to you and await feedback. We often have back and forth with potential clients, trying to clarify things, add more detail, change the timeline, see if we can stretch the budget. So we do all of those things very collaboratively. We want to make sure that it's a project that is clear and aligned with your goals, and also is something that we feel we can accomplish. Once we have the project proposal accepted by the client, we have a 2-page contract that the UMass General Counsel has developed for us, one that we've used for those 1,200 projects. It's pretty straightforward, and we get that signed by the 3 entities. And I say 3 because it's the client, it's the Collins Center, and then we need to have someone at UMass Boston sign it. And then we're off to the races. Before I am done, does anybody have questions about anything I just talked about? Was anything unclear?
I had a small one, Sarah. I know you mentioned you've done 1,200 projects. Of those, how many of those have been regionalization studies? And do you have any currently being performed by the Collins Center?
Off the top of my head, I can't say that we've done anything exactly like what you all are asking to be done.
Okay.
We have worked with regional schools on a variety of projects, and some of those projects would be relevant to some of the work that you want to do. So for example, when I first was in receipt of the ENR grant application, when I first read it through, I said, oh gosh, this reminds me of the project we did for a small superintendent's union out in Western Mass that looked at basically cost efficiencies. And that was a project that Anne was an integral part of, and she could speak, more specifically as to the scope. But nothing exactly like what you all have done, which makes it fun.
We can learn together.
Yeah. Other questions?
Anybody else? Anybody else from the committee have any questions?
Jonathan, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sarah, just to piggyback on that you have not yet done this scope of a project, what would you use for your comparisons, and how would you come to your conclusions? Would it just be data driven, or would you be looking at other studies that have been done by other firms?
Well, I will probably need to defer to Anne and Bill on that question. I don't want to get ahead of them in terms of the scope of work. So maybe Anne or Bill will ask you if you could field that one.
Sure, Sarah, I'll take that. I think that the answer to the question is it depends. And it depends on the scope of your project. It depends on if there is something that is actually comparable. Certainly we would look at that. And if comparison is it may be part of some of the study. So for example, if you're looking at different types of efficiencies, we may look for other districts or other district unions that have gone through something similar. However, this is fairly unique. It's unique in the projects that I've been part of. And again, that is what makes it exciting, as Sarah said. But I don't know that we would depend heavily on comparison. I think we really need to understand your context, to understand what you would like to get from this, and to really then look and analyze each of the areas to see, I saw questions around efficiency. I saw questions around cost savings. I see questions around, analyzing the quality of the educational experience. So these are all very unique, individualized areas that would have to be looked at separately. And then how does it all work together? But I don't know that we would say, oh, here are the comparison districts. When we go into a district sometimes, for example, and we're looking at just the organizational structure, and the district asks us, we want to know, is our administrative staffing appropriate? And I'm very much simplifying, okay, one little area just to give you an idea. if that's one of the questions that need to be answered in the study, of course, we are absolutely going to look for very specific similar districts, some that DESE has identified, some that the district uses itself for collective bargaining, for example. And then we're also going to look at the demographics, the students that are being served by that district. And then we get to what examples of in-district testing, in-district evaluation that's used, as well as state resources. So just for that one question, we would be identifying specific comparison districts, because it would be super helpful if we can get the exact same or very close to demographics and similar types of assessment instruments being used. I hope I didn't go like too far astray, but just wanted you to see it's a really complex question, and it really does depend on what your goals are and what types of comparisons we are actually able to find. We're not going to force it, and we're not going to compare things that really are apples and oranges.
And the only thing oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, sorry. I have a meeting that starts in about 5 minutes in the other room. So I was wondering, do you have any other dates set up for future meetings yet?
For this committee, I believe we're July 9th is our next scheduled meeting.
9th, okay. Let me just double check that.
And it's a 5:30 start.
5:30, okay, that'd be good, because I'm in Halifax until 5, so that'd be perfect.
I can pick you up.
Yeah. All right, very good. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure I can make the next one in person, so.
Yeah, no worries. Did someone else, Bill, did you have something else to say?
Yeah, the only thing I would say, in addition to what Sarah and Ann have said, is that, and this is just from looking through the questions you sent us, that even though those studies, a couple of the studies I talked about and that I know Ann's been involved in, were different kind of focus areas with regional school districts, there are a number of areas that you touched on in terms of transportation questions that were brought up by what happens if we close a school, what happens to our regional agreement, that I think are sort of on point with what you're doing. So even though the end goal, right, of those studies was different, there are enough similarities in terms of some of the particular pieces that I think we can say we have experience with a number of those different aspects that would be helpful here.
I will say that I need to go now, but I've worked on lots of regional agreements throughout the state with Mars and just on my own. And so I'm really familiar with how this process would go, so we can all work together on that.
That'd be great.
But I've, like Silver Lake, when Pembroke left, my father and I worked on that transition. We've worked on combining regions. We've worked on creating K-12s that weren't K-12s before. So there's a whole bunch of things that I can help you all with too. So we can all work together, collaboratively to make it happen, or whatever is going to happen here. So, all right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
One quick question too, if we were to go forward, guys, I know you mentioned you have 50 employees. Would we have our own set team? Do you reach across all 50 employees to tap their knowledge? What would our individual approach be to this project here?
You'd be looking at the team right now. I mean, Ann and Bill are here because we've already had conversations in our school's practice team to say who has the capacity in their portfolio and the experience to take this project on potentially. And that's why Ann and Bill are here and not somebody else from the school's practice team. There will certainly be others who have other roles, but Ann and Bill would be the folks that would be your main contacts, the main associates on the project. We know for sure we would need an analyst to help us with research, data collection, organization, etc. And there may also be somebody who does sort of like very high level project management just to liaise with Bill and Ann, because they're not full-time. All of our project managers are full-time, and so that is a sort of a logistical thing on our end. Ann and Bill may want to bring in, again, once they clarify the scope, they may want to or need to bring in somebody else with particular expertise, whether it's, well, I don't want to speculate. I'll let them speak to that when the time is right. But Ann and Bill would be the key players on the project team.
Okay, and then as far as costs, we've been awarded a set amount in a grant. How do we ensure that we're going to be able to do this study and maintain, be under the limit of the grant money that we have?
So the way that our contracts work is that they're flat fee. So we negotiate a scope of work and we work on where we think the budget needs to be for that scope of work. If for whatever reason we're not comfortable saying that we can do the scope of work that you've asked us to do with the budget that you have, we'll tell you that, and we will work to figure out what the solution is. If we go over budget because we, Collins Center, made a mistake and didn't fully understand how many hours a particular task would take, then we eat that. So we have a flat fee arrangement for our projects. Now, if there was any scope change is something that we would need to talk about and work through. But we often work on projects that have a set budget because whether it's something that was appropriated by town meeting or their grants. And so we're well aware of those boundaries. And again, a lot of the work at the very beginning of the scoping and budget development really speaks to the need to define a scope that will work for the budget that you have.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, this was great. Anything else you would like us to know?
Well, I think that if we are going to write a proposal for you, then I expect that Ann and Bill have some questions that they're going to want to ask you. And so if you have the ability, I think I'd say this would be the time, right, Ann and Bill? Yeah. So if that works for you, we'd sort of want to probe some of what we've heard from our conversations and what we read in the grant application and even the questions that you all helpfully shared ahead of this meeting.
Okay, I don't want to speak for the whole committee, but I think we touched on them at the beginning where we'd like to look into efficiencies. We'd like to look at any sort of cost savings. We'd like to look at controls of certain schools, basically essentially soup to nuts. I don't know how else to say it, but every measurable impact of a regionalization, we'd like to take a look at.
And can I add
Go
to
ahead.
that?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Joe.
I mean, I think there's been off and on discussions for years about whether making a change to the K to 8, what that would result in. And so I think the goal here is really to make sure that we get a factual, valuation of that. And that way we can bring that back and have a discussion after we have the facts. Because a lot of people have certain assumptions and the assumptions may or may not be correct. So that's really the goal. And I think there's the questions I think generally are around that. And there's some things that maybe branch out. So we'll have to kind of corral all that into different buckets. But I think in the end, we just want to be able to know that we're looking at some good factual information to make decisions.
Right.
And that's not just for school committees, but it's for each of the towns to be able to evaluate and then try and decide what's next. And that doesn't necessarily mean regionalization. It may absolutely mean regionalization. It just, we don't have the facts and we need the facts.
Oh, may I?
No, always. You guys have an open floor.
If I may add to what John just shared from Plimpton's perspective and as well from Kingston's perspective, no decisions have been made. This was something that has come up after multiple town meetings and school committee meetings and board of selectmen meetings where we're trying to figure out how to best, I think, make the district more efficient in all areas. And if this is something that could help, then I think that would be something that would eventually need to be taken to a vote. If it's not something that seems practical for our district at the time, then we may not be able to move forward with it. So no decisions have been made on our end. We've recognized the need for the study, and that's why it was brought up.
Yeah, I think that hits the nail on the head right there.
Can I ask too, the educational metrics that you could provide, would that also include, I suppose the metrics of whatever the districts are using, if we're not using all of the same measures for their educational impact, not just MCAS scores, but is that something that you would also look into? Their high performance, or however, I'm not sure what your metric base is.
Ann, go ahead. No, Ann, go ahead.
Go ahead, it's fine.
Well, I was going to say that yes, I think that would include understanding what each of the districts use, whether there are consistent measures across the district, and then being able to try to, figure out what that means at present, and what you may want to put in place, the school district may want to put in place to sort of make those measurements in terms of improvements going forward.
Okay,
So I think it starts out with us understanding what's in place.
Right.
sure. Thank you.
Can I just piggyback on that? So this may be too much of an in the weeds detail, but a concern that I have and have had for a while as a Halifax school committee member is the equity in what education we provide in each of the 3 different school districts at the through 6th level, making sure that we have the right curriculum offerings, staff offerings, that there's equity in the education that each of the 3 towns offers to students, regardless of where they live in the district, so that they're equally prepared to be at the same level when they get to 7th grade. I don't know, with differing town budgets and the crunch that we're all dealing with now, especially, that I feel like this study in particular is really important at this moment in time, as we're all trying to figure out how to do more with less.
Sure. And I'll be completely honest too, I'm from Halifax as well, and that's one of the drivers for me. I know there's been talk of regionalization for a while, and it seems like we've hit such a financial tough spot now that I think there is a little bit of the door's slightly open right now, maybe more so than in previous years, because we owe it to our residents to, see if there's some efficiencies, to see if there's a way we can run things a little bit tighter and smoother, so that we might not be as in a significant crunch as we may be in.
Yeah, you just made my, so one thing I neglected to mention in my introduction is that I spent 3 years after leaving Massachusetts in one of the school administrative units in New Hampshire, SAU 21, just over the border, which is actually 5 different school districts. And the remarks that you just made was my annual speech, particularly when you were working in a district, if you know those towns, where I had Northampton, Hampton Falls, and then Seabrook, very, very different demographically in terms of districts, all feeding into one high school, and the constant worry of people in those communities and us as the central office for that administrative unit of how do we make sure, as kids are coming to the high school, that they have opportunities to take advantage of when they get there. And so, yes, I couldn't agree with that more. I think that has to be a really key element of this work.
And you mentioned demographics. Would we get into the demographics of the 3 different communities? Would the study go that deep as to demographics of what our school populations are?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 Like she was saying, let's do that before they do the study.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, can I just ask you 2 questions that you included here? Ann, did I cut you? I'm sorry if I cut you off.
Go ahead.
I did, but thank you, Ann. There's a question here about when can we expect the final report? First of all, there's something in here. Again, some of these I think we can answer now. would we have interim updates, preliminary findings? Yes, yes, yes. There'd be regular updates through this process. When would a final report be most useful? I guess is the question.
What do you think, guys?
As soon as you can get it done.
Yeah.
Is yesterday too aggressive?
Yeah.
Why did I know that would be the answer to that question?
99.9% of clients have that answer.
Yeah.
We are just about to, we just wrapped up one school year. We'll be going
Yes.
into July.
Yes.
But then our budget season is going to be underway by the fall for administrators. And then we start looking at the budgets in January for the school districts. So having an idea of where this might be going, possibly for like 2027, that would be, I think, most helpful.
So in a perfect world, you'd want to at least have some of those preliminary kinds of ideas of what we're working on in that time frame. Ideally, the final report, but at the very least, some of those pieces.
I think to see which direction we might be heading or what,
Yeah, I think obviously we're too late for this coming, budget season, but
I think even after a final report, you would need a year.
Yeah.
To even to best case scenario, a year to be able to get out to educate, if there's gonna be a change,
right.
Yeah.
right? If there's gonna be a change. So, but I think getting that periodic feedback will be useful as we head into budget season, just so we have an idea of where things are, because, if there's the hope for some people that regionalization is this great holy grail, and we're all clear that it's not, maybe it has some benefits, but it's not gonna be anything magic, then that helps to be able to have the discussions and take that, that idea off the table. That, but I do think, it's if there's a final report, I think it's kind of like now is when a final report is needed to be able to get a jump on the next year if action is going to be taken. You know what I mean? But I think we're going to start to have an idea of where things are coming out as we go along through this and through different pieces. And then probably the last part of the process would be dealing with the finer points on things. And
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Anne, I'm sorry.
Well, you interrupted and you took my question, so there. Yeah, because we would be interested in interviewing people, spending significant time combing through data, not only on student performance, but there are a lot of questions that are obviously linked to finances and to expenditures and things like that. So we definitely would be spending a lot of time with that, but we would be setting up interviews and also focus groups with the community to really get a sense of where things are going well, where are the challenges, and what are the hopes for the future, whether it's regionalization or further regionalization or something else. So
what to that end, to Anne's point there, there's a question here about how and when will taxpayers get a chance to, the question is to chime in on the process. What do you see as the role of taxpayers in this process?
I think it's extremely relevant. I think that they're going to want to know exactly our questions, what is most cost effective, what is most practical, but also what is the buy-in? Is this something that's are we going to pay a little upfront and it's going to save us millions, or are we going to save a lot upfront, but it could cost us millions by, give and takes from grants and things like that, regional transportation reimbursements. I think we had discussed at our last meeting, we'd like to see something along the lines of public forums that the public can come and ask questions, whether that's at different parts of the study or at the beginning, maybe middle, just to kind of gauge where the public is at with the whole study, not one way or the other. To John's point, none of us are decided on which direction we'd like this to go. It's just we've all recognized the need for doing the study. So
that's very
And I think
helpful.
to dovetail on that, I think part of it is we have three very different sized fish in this ocean. You know, Kingston is the whale, Halifax is the bass, and Plimpton's the minnow, right? So those ones that are the smallers are a little concerned that they get swallowed up by the whale here, just being totally transparent.
Sure.
So the more we can educate people on what changes may come of this and what to expect other than just the bottom line figure, I think will help us if this is the way we want to go.
So I also think that it's important for us at an early stage to invite taxpayers in is to ask them to be agents of transparency in our community, to observe and share, but also to maybe be champions of whatever direction the committee is recommending, but also represent the concerns that we know we're going to hear from certain constituents. So I think a taxpayer that we pull in should maybe not have children in the school system. We all have, or most of us have had kids recently that have gone through the school system, but we do have a lot of taxpayers that don't have a vested interest in the schools, but they pay in taxes to support the schools. So, I feel like that's an important piece.
Let me ask.
That's really helpful. Thanks. So I thought, sir,
Well, I was just going to ask a follow-up because we do a lot of projects that have this concern or need to have this component of community engagement. And so understanding how, where it falls in terms of how priority and how you guys think about it is really, really important. We have done some projects where the community engagement piece is significant, others where it's less significant in terms of like the number of events and so on. Would it be helpful? So when we do a project like this, and when we are at the start, or sort of the beginning to middle, one of the things that I've done in some projects in the past, not schools focused, but focused on sharing policing actually, is to have a community forum that really focuses on understanding what does the community value? What does it love about, what do community members love about their town, about their school district? What do they definitely want to protect throughout this process? And what do they want to think about changing? What would they want to see done differently or better? Because we want to know. So at the end of the day, this question, you're not going to get a report that says you should definitely regionalize because it's going to save you $500 million. And it's not going to be that black and white, because these decisions are value judgments. And the only people who can make those decisions are the people who live in the communities. And they may say, yes, we want to save a lot of money, but no, we don't want to sacrifice X, Y, and Z, whatever those values are. So it's really going to come down to a value judgment that your communities are going to have to make. So I like having public forums or at least a public forum toward the beginning that really gets to those values. That gives us a really good foundation. But what I'm hearing from you too is that you've got these three different distinct towns, and maybe it would make sense. And here's my question. Does it make sense to have three separate public forums, one for each community? Or do you think it makes more sense to have one public forum?
Three separate. Three. All those in favor?
Yeah. I was going there when my mind was already there when you started the question, so they're just different, and I think you're not gonna get the flavor of the thing.
Yeah.
And then you can also hold these and then no one shows up. So,
Right.
Yeah.
transparency. Oh, I'm busy tonight, and
Yeah.
but we need to do them to give the opportunity,
Yeah.
right? And then if we get some good feedback from it, then that's a bonus.
Mhm.
That's what the
And
values are.
we can record them and use them to get out to the public. So for the folks that, unfortunately may not show up, they'll at least flip on the internet and be able to watch them.
Okay. Do you envision other types of community engagement that you feel would work really well? Anne mentioned focus groups. We've done focus groups, and Anne and Bill can comment more specifically, but I remember schools projects where we've done focus groups of educators, focus group. We even did one, I think, Bill, we both worked on it. We did a focus group that was high school students because we
Yes.
were talking about something that impacted them. We wanted to get the student perspective. So what other types of community engagement, and I say community, that could mean the school community, it could mean the broader community. What other types of community engagement do you think that you definitely want to see, if you know, at this stage?
Gene?
I would say the board of selectmen and the finance committees, for each of the towns, possibly even the school committees, just to kind of gauge that stakeholder interest from those that serve. I think would be different from gauging just the community members that want to have a say in this. I think coming from a perspective of a select board member or finance committee member, those would be different questions based for different reasons. Like Lori said, some of us have kids in school, some don't. I think coming from their concerns, that would be good.
And then possibly a parent focus group, depending on what you get or don't get for a broader, forum. So if the forum doesn't have that many parents there, then it's better to go and corral some parents and get them to, because that's going to be part of it too, is what values do they see for their school? Right?
Is
But I think as it moves along, depending on what the results are, moving into also community focus groups, specifically non-parents, because I think that would help create better understanding. Because sometimes I think non-parents don't always get all of the information, and then it creates more problems, especially, when you get into the budget, when you get things saying, well, I don't have a kid in the schools, the way this is going to impact me. Yeah. And they don't always have all of the information. So I think that might help us kind of get it out to the broader community if that seemed appropriate based on where things, are going.
May I ask the superintendent, are there internal, are there school-based groups that you would want to see, whether it's an informational session, updates, or opportunity to provide feedback that you would want to see as part of this?
Absolutely. I think it would be ideal to include representatives from the schools, but also the central office staff. One of the difficulties of being partially regionalized is some of the difficulties we encounter with efficiencies. So when you speak to things like whether or not we have the same testing in all of the schools, yes, we work very hard to make sure that they have, the students have the same kind of standardized measures that we use in classrooms and things of that nature. Our concern is that as the budgets become more difficult to maintain, we fear that some schools won't be able to continue with certain materials or testing or things of that nature. When I talk about efficiencies, I think about when I first became superintendent, and I think of COVID, and not only having to present a plan to the state, but during that emergency having to present 4 plans to the state, and then working with 4 separate communities regularly, day and night, to try to get everyone to agree to the same type of way to return to school, because I couldn't in good conscience say, these students are going to be remote, but these students, it's okay for them to come back hybrid. And how do you advocate to be as the superintendent of both districts, where there's different rules for different schools at a time when people are, they have heightened awareness of what's going on in the schools in terms of their fears and their concerns for the upcoming future. So I definitely think that we probably bring a different perspective than the towns in terms of the efficiencies that are difficult to realize. We also recognize that towns often feel frustrated that they don't have as much of us devoted to each particular town, because we're spread amongst the several towns and we have to do multiple separate budget presentations. So those are just a couple of examples of
That's
why I
great.
think the perspective might be helpful. And I do think, having done my own entry plan with survey results with parents and students, I do think that the secondary students take participation in focus groups very seriously. And while they may not have the same perspective, I do think they also can lend an important perspective and lens to the issues that they may encounter that we may not consider.
That's great. Very helpful. Thank you.
Bill, if I may, lastly, I think definitely the unions, we would want
Yes.
Yep.
groups
Yeah.
around.
Yep.
Unions. I know there's some questions about that, that we've
Yes.
focus groups around the unions and what they're looking from this or not looking for.
Yeah, I've never, and I think Ann would agree with me. I've never done any of these kind of studies without making sure that teachers had opportunities for input and the union and never confusing the two of those. Right, never making the assumption that those are the same people.
Right. Always.
So just to summarize, if we wanted to put a focus group together, faculty, both central office and teach educators, students, a selectman, maybe a member of the PTO from each community, a member of the finance committee, member of the school committee, and then a union member as well. So I don't know if we want to get as aggressive enough as to have every town try and round up each of those.
I think we might look at those as separate groups, including those school committees. I think, Sarah, you tell me if we have enough sort of to go on with just what some of those groups might be, but in order to get a broad enough representation, we'd probably want to meet with small groups of each of those subgroups, right? Rather than try to put them in one group or in a couple groups, we'd want to meet with them and interview them sort of as a small group around their particular connection to this issue.
Right.
Makes way more sense.
And then depending on the particulars, and some of those we might be able to do some combination depending on the, whether everyone gets along is the other piece. But like in Plimpton, I think we could probably do the school committee, finance committee, and selectmen all together in one group because we do that at times, so it's not a big deal. But I think it could be different town to town, but we can look for some efficiency there too, so that you're not having 47.
Yeah. And we just have to help people pay attention to whether those meetings need to be posted and all those kinds of things. So, yeah.
Great.
That's great.
Any more questions for us, guys?
Do you guys have does the study committee have a specific written charge that is out there? Because I know you all represent finance committees, select boards, school committees, right? What is the charge, if it's clear, that you all have from your home bodies?
Well, but I would argue that was what we talked about at the beginning. I mean, this is about a factual survey and analysis of where we are, what the options could be going forward, what some of the costs and benefits and detractors may be. I mean, I think the committee's pretty united on wanting to get the facts out there. And again, it's not all just about the dollar, but what are some of the benefits and drawbacks, and making sure that we have it from a comprehensive group. To the superintendent's point, there's a number of others that we consider, and get that on the table so we can stop. Everyone can stop debating about what they think it means or doesn't mean. And we actually have a study that says, here it is, and there's factual context to it.
Okay. So your committee will not necessarily be making a recommendation one way or the other. Your charge is more to play that exploratory role so that there's a foundation of fact that the three communities and the various school districts can then take and carry forward until that decision point.
I don't know that we would make a recommendation until we see the report.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it depends. The report may come out, who knows? that's the thing, it could be no brainer, but I think the focus at this point is to do whatever we can to get you what you need to help us get to a report and then take the next step from there.
I guess the question that I never thought of until she just brought this up, as far as our charge goes, do you guys see us taking a vote at the end of this saying yay or nay as a group or no?
I think so, but I
In terms
think
of regional-
you guys are going far out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that, I'm not sure what that even means, like,
Because we don't.
because it's gonna be,
Yeah.
it's gonna be up to each town.
Sure.
But I think I would focus our duty on getting the report and getting it back to our towns. Like, and
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we
Yeah.
could keep that report from the towns, to your point,
Yeah.
but we also don't have the authority of this body to, none of us.
I don't
Oh, no,
care.
no,
I don't think I would care what our
No,
vote is.
no, but like-
So we
But-
would bring it to our communities, and ultimately the board of selectmen of each community decide. school
And then
committees.
probably other discussions between
And then,
the boards of selectmen
Right.
and,
Sure,
for trying to
But
come
it
up
would
with
be
a
it would be
consensus.
helpful for.
I agree.
for
You know, like when we
Dell
have town meetings and you have FinCom recommends or doesn't recommend,
Exactly.
you know, I don't want to speak for all the
I
selectmen,
don't
but
think it can go with it.
you do
Well-
lean on, I don't want to say you're experts, but you do lean on the people that put the time in.
Yeah.
That uncovered all their stuff to give that,
Sure.
I don't have to listen to it at all,
Right.
Yeah,
but at least it.
It does hold
gives you
weight
a
at
little-
town meeting as well.
Yeah.
Like, what is the
Helpful for a lot of
recommendation?
people, too.
Yeah. And, you know, maybe that's.
But I don't know what
not
that
you
would
say,
look like
Jean
yet.
said, That's down the road.
I think the biggest, like, the value of this is just knowledge is power. We have assumptions.
Yep.
But we don't have knowledge right now. So this sets a foundation of knowledge that we can then share with the community. Because there's a lot of folks that are going on their experiential knowledge of, well, back in the day when I had kids, we did it this way. And I like local control of the school, but like, again, our culture, our world is ever evolving, and what worked 20 years ago may not be feasible any longer. People aren't thinking in that way. So setting a baseline of knowledge of the current climate and the options, I think, is our primary objective, and then disseminating that in our community. But that's just me.
I agree, though, after some of the comments that were heard during budget season this
Yeah.
past year, like that was really highlighted
100%.
with some of the comments from just the general taxpayers about how they felt things should go and their reasoning as to why.
Jim Walters, you said you were working on a charge?
Well, I've crafted a brief 2-sentence purpose that I think gets to the heart of what we want to do. So in my opinion, and everyone's welcome to disagree or agree, it's fine. The purpose of the study is to assess the feasibility, benefits, challenges, and impacts of regionalizing 3 school districts, including but not limited to evaluating educational, operational, financial, demographic, and legal implications of various regionalization models.
Second.
Now drop the mic. You gotta drop the mic after
Yeah.
something like that. That's a mic drop, Jim. Yeah, that's it, pretty much in a nutshell.
Do you see your committee having a role post-report in terms of carrying I mean, you talked about bringing the information back to your own communities. Will the committee stay together and bring the report to the various communities and different constituencies, or will you dissolve? I guess I'm just trying to really understand, because that will impact, I think, part of what we want to produce for you all. You know, we've done various, you know, types of work. We've worked with committees where they say, get us all the facts, and then we're going to take it and we're going to be advocates for whichever direction we decide we're going to go. Others don't have that sense, and so that it just changes the sort of some of the deliverables and some of our thought process behind how we bring this to a conclusion. Because as you all noted, this is a bounded project, but at the same time, it's the next step in this conversation. There's going to be a lot more after. So it's just something to think about. If you have ideas now, happy to hear them, but something to think about, because it may impact where we go with the proposal, especially, as I said, those deliverables.
To that point, I believe that this study is going to be, that would be the foundation that we would either be saying we should be moving forward with full regionalization, or we should not because of this reason. So I think this report is going to give us a lot of answers that we currently don't have. So to John's point earlier, it's a fact-finding mission. We're looking for the facts and the scope of what a full regionalization would look like.
But I do think to go off of that point, I don't think we can just dissolve after we get the report. I do think part of this committee's charge should be to help disseminate that information, you know, and be carriers of factual information.
Yep.
So to
Not
everybody.
just
Right.
our own,
Correct.
but I think that would be
Correct.
helpful, you know, for Kingston could hear from Halifax and Plimpton, you know, if we had a forum for, you know,
Sure.
to relay information and cross.
Right, and not just, you know, I'd love to have everybody in Halifax if and when we have a Halifax, you know, I don't think we necessarily need to divide it out by towns, you know, as far as we go
I think it would
But,
be advantageous to keep it together to deliver
Correct.
those.
to deliver it,
I think so.
not to sell it or
To
not sell
deliver the
it.
information
but to
as a
deliver.
unit that
Yeah,
heard it all together.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
And we may run across something during this investigative process that says we just can't do it.
Mhm.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's also another
That
possibility.
was one of the questions we were kicking around, guys, was if in any of your regionalization studies, have you ever found a study that says it wasn't really advantageous to regionalize? Or has it always been I don't want to say a blanket yes, but has it have more than not kind of leaned towards regionalization than staying separate, I guess?
Or is it not that simple of an answer?
I love
It's
that
just-
face. Jill Brule, that's the face of the day right there.
It is not a simple answer, I would
Yeah, I know
say. It's not a silver bullet, because if it were a silver bullet, you would have you know, pulled the trigger already.
But we got a lot of werewolves running around right now.
So, you know, it really comes down to the nuances of your situation. You know, we've worked with communities that are looking toward regionalization. We've been asked to do studies of deregionalization, you know, so there, I think in our Commonwealth, there's all sorts of things going on. And there are a lot of different reasons behind the challenges that a single district would face, you know, a regional district would face. That's an unsatisfactory answer, but I really don't think that you can really say with certainty that it's more likely that you'll want to regionalize at the end of this or not. I don't know if Anne or Bill or maybe if the superintendent has thoughts, but
No, I think that's right, Sarah. It's all context driven.
Right. All right, well,
Okay.
I don't think we haven't officially, you know, I thank you guys for coming in. Like we haven't officially, I don't know how to put this, but we haven't officially gone with the Collins Center yet as the group to lead this for us. I think what we have to do as a committee here is to discuss things, whether we want to go forward using the Collins Center based on what we've heard here. And then we have a meeting scheduled for July the 9th. Depending on what we discuss here, might be, if we do decide to go with the Collins Center, might be worth having you folks in July 9th if you were available. Does that seem amenable to the committee here?
Yes.
Well, you, Sarah, it's somewhere in this, get to that point that you discussed earlier about putting together a proposal,
yeah.
right? And this, given your time frame, I mean, if I'm speaking out of turn, please tell me, Sarah.
Go
If you're
right
given
ahead,
your
Bill.
time
Go
frame,
ahead.
no, given your time frame, I think we'd want to get, if that's what you wanted to do, we want to get to that point where Sarah would lead that particular aspect of this, but we want to make sure you had a proposal, as she discussed up front, as quickly as possible so that the work could get started.
Right.
That makes sense.
Would the committee be comfortable maybe after we hang up with you guys to discuss internally and make a vote tonight?
Yeah, we'll vote tonight, and I say that because one of the things that Sarah had mentioned was whether or not they could complete the study with the scope we are asking within our financial financial constraints, because should you come back and say, we can only do a small portion of this for what you have, then
You'd
we
want to know that.
forced to see what other options might be out there.
Yeah.
That's my reasoning.
Well, I think the discussion would be whether we would like them to,
Well, without knowing what they could do. is a
well,
little bit-
that's what I mean. We would discuss tonight whether we'd like them to get us a proposal together.
Right.
This is gonna be the next step, regardless of anything before we sign anything. Like, we're not, like,
It's
as
not
we
a
talked about, there's no contract being signed until we've gotten to the point of
Looking at the proposal.
of all agreeing on the proposal, agreeing on the costs, and then there's the contract. So I think we can do what you're thinking. It's just slightly different.
Know what the time frame would be to receive a proposal?
So what I know, I think it would be really helpful if you all, after we are gone, have a conversation about what you heard tonight. If you are interested in a proposal from us, please let us know in the next, well, the three of us are going to be meeting internally on Friday at 11:30 to debrief and start, if appropriate, start to kind of piecing out that proposal. And so if we could know before 11:30 this Friday whether you're interested in a proposal from us, that would be really helpful. If you say, yes, we are interested in a proposal, then we will move forward as quickly as we can in developing that draft proposal. And I call it draft because I really want, it's really important to us that we have a back and forth on the proposal. Our initial proposal may have some things that make sense to us, but not to you, and we want to talk about that. So I would say this is a big project too, and I will also say you've got a very healthy budget for what, but you do have a big project. But I think that
We don't have to spend it all, though.
right, that's true. That's true, and you may want to reserve. There may be a need because the one thing of all the great things we are, one thing that we are not is lawyers. And so if you need to pay counsel for anything in particular, then you'll want to make sure that you know that upfront. But we could have a proposal to you before the July 9th meeting. And at the July 9th meeting, if you have two proposals that you want to talk about internally, then that's fine. If you just want us to come potentially, I don't know about Ann and Bill's availability, but if we're available and we could attend and you wanted to be able to ask us questions and we could sort of go back and forth on the proposal in that meeting, we can do that. But I think we can have a proposal to you, that draft proposal prior to the 9th.
Yeah, that'd be great. And you could get it to us ahead of time so we could kick the tires on it and then have questions or feedback for you for the meeting itself.
Yeah, as much as we can, we will do that. Luckily, my vacation doesn't start till July 10th, so I will not be going on any vacations between now and the meeting. So
Going anywhere fun? Where are you going?
we're going to Scotland, bringing my family to.
Oh, very cool.
Yes. I've got two elementary school aged kids and my husband is a high school teacher. And so they all just got home. They're all here. So, we're excited about summer break for sure.
Safe travel.
All right. So
I can do the 9th as well, Sarah. So.
Oh, you can. Good.
I cannot. I will be coming home from Scotland in the UK.
Okay.
I work at the Collins Center. That's it. Said it.
I don't know.
All right. Well, why don't we say that at least we'll have some representatives from the center there on the 9th. I think I heard you say it was at 5:30.
Yep.
And so we'll put that on our calendars as a tentative meeting. You'll let us know before Friday at 11 a.m. Unless you know for sure now that you want a proposal. And then we'll get working on it.
Yes. Yeah. We'll discuss offline. if
Okay.
that's okay, yeah.
Yep, just let us know because that would be helpful to know.
I appreciate it. Anything else, guys, for the Collins Center before we let them go?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Okay. Thoughts?
I will make a motion that we move forward with the Collins Center proposal and let them know by Friday.
Second. All right, do I need to do a roll call where we are technically online, but no members are online?
No.
No, right?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Uh,
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
I think what's gonna happen is that we will get what we need within the budget.
What she
That's
said
what it
was a
sounded like
healthy
she
budget,
said,
but
yeah.
until that
But-
point,
but
she
this
just
is- this- I
kind
mean,
of
this
said
is-
it's a big project.
And if we went with someone, and if we went with an external consultant, we wouldn't have that one.
No.
But we don't know that.
So
Yeah.
what are our options?
So there's another one, there's Mars. but
Yeah.
That they likely would have to go out to bid.
We would
For them,
have to
because
go
they're
out
not-
with it, right?
They're not on the state list. The
Right.
state has an approved list.
Got it.
And the Collins Center is on the approved list.
Mars is down, it's even more because they're an actual state
Yeah.
entity,
Yeah.
Right,
That's
correct.
so.
And I know they did, so Halifax used them for a compensation and classification study. Amazingly, they hit the number that we had available, so I do think there's a,
Sure.
I don't wanna say a game, but there's a little bit of.
They know
But
what
to
the
her
risk
point,
is.
you know, if they did underestimate something, delete cost, they understand that those
Yeah.
numbers can be variable.
Yeah.
They have a target to meet, and that's what, hopefully, like a contractor,
Yeah.
they'll honor it.
Clifton hasn't done anything with them where they haven't.
Yeah,
done
no, they were
budget
great.
Grants.
The study they
It's all
did
been
for us
grants that
was
we've
great.
done.
Now,
Can I?
oh,
If I
sorry.
may?
Yes, Jill
So-
Proul, superintendent.
So, sorry, I couldn't figure out where my hand raise was earlier. I wanted to mention something earlier. I do have one concern that they've never done a regionalization study.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I know I'm the fly in the ointment as usual, but
Oh, that's okay.
I don't think that's what she said.
No, that is what she said.
She
She
said no
said she's never done a
regionalization.
regionalization study where schools have regionalized. They've done pieces
And
that
they
they're
don't
going to try to weave
Leave
in,
them all together.
which tells me, which answers my first question. They don't have a report that says, one, that they don't recommend it, because they don't even have one where they do recommend.
That's not-
That's what I heard.
That's not what I heard. I heard they don't have a study like ours.
That's what I heard.
And, and,
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I know that, what Bill was saying, I mean, he's done a lot of work, a fair number of work on that as well. And, you know, the point is that, I think the point is that this isn't, the thing's gonna come back and it's not gonna be, you should do this.
Right.
Right.
It's going to be, you can save, maybe, you can save this much money.
Ranges.
And you're gonna have this as benefits, and you're gonna have this as detractors. And maybe it's not even you don't save money, because you're gonna lose certain things by regional life. We'll lose the rural aid, that will go away. And so, you know, there's some things that will offset. And that it's not gonna be a slam dunk. It's gonna be a bunch of the factors analyzed and discussed and figured out. And then and I think that's what they were getting at when they talked about, you know, more about the values. Like, you may decide that, yeah, okay, we're not saving that much money, but we're gonna get, you know, Jill's hair isn't gonna go completely gray in the next 5 years, you know, and that's a benefit. It's like we all know, like, this isn't even an assumption. We know that from an administrative standpoint, it would be a lot easier if it were all in one school
Yeah.
district. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that's a no,
Without a
right?
doubt.
But there's other things that we don't know. So, I mean, I think that, you know, they have a whole school practices group. And I think they picked the people in order to be able to come up with and go through these different pieces.
So I had a couple of questions more along the lines of like devil's advocate. I think they want to do the study for them because it is unique and it would be a nice thing to add to their toolkit of experiences that they've done. They probably could be very helpful, but also a couple reasons I think it's worth it to pursue another entity for a proposal. One, I think it's due diligence on our part to not just go with the only game we've heard. From a community perspective, they may want to hear, oh, you also looked at this other agency and went with that. So that buys us some credibility among the community. Two, from what I understood about the proposal process, it's not going to be we give them a check on July 9th. It's going to be, yeah, we would like to give you feedback on this proposal. So two things can happen at the same time. We can be refining this proposal with them without committing to it, at least that's what I heard, while we pursue Mars. I don't see any, you know,
Well, you're not
Reason why
gonna,
not
you're
to.
not gonna get anything from Mars until August
Right, the
Yeah.
determined.
at a
cost
minimum,
would-
because we have to draft an RFP.
Yeah.
We then have to go out to bid. and put the RFP out there. You have to wait for the information to come in. And with what, how much money do we have this, 140?
130. Lori, that was actually my concern at the first meeting, was should we do our due diligence and look at multiple different, but it's the RFP process, which Collins Center is the only.
Well,
One that
they've
we're
been
even
put
considering that
in place.
would
But the whole purpose of them existing is to
Make it easier.
do municipal consulting for the towns of the Commonwealth.
And I don't think, and I could be wrong, but my vision is that if we did look at Mars, I still don't know if we would get, yes, definitely regionalized or don't. I think we're still gonna be in
It'll be a lot of the
that
same data.
Well, if you do, I think
Data
if
we're
you
gonna
do
get.
something wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's not that simple, right? There's a
Right,
lot of
right.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finance Director Sarah Hickey, you have the floor.
Thank you. I haven't figured out how to raise my hand on screen yet, so it's a good thing.
Can't really,
Yeah,
we can't really see it anyway, so
Yeah,
just interrupt.
Just shout,
Um,
just scream.
I can't see if Keith Hickey is still in the room there. Keith and Jill and I actually met with the Collins Center about a month ago. And one of the things they talked about was they were doing a study at Nauset Regional. So I think they could, we could request of them studies that they've done. Nauset Regional is, from my understanding, very similar, a very similar ask than what we're looking for, that they're fully regionalized at the middle school and high school level, and then 4 towns, Orleans, I forget the names of all the towns that are down there, but my recollection from that meeting with them prior was that they were doing that work with Nauset Regional.
Right, and perhaps it's obviously not the 3 that we saw tonight that are doing that study. And that's probably why, if the study's not already complete, then they wouldn't have had the data to present us anyway.
Yeah.
And I guess even if we were going down the Mars Road, wouldn't we request a proposal from these guys anyway,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
So we would jump that hurdle anyway, so I guess it doesn't really hold us back from going forward with accepting a proposal, or like you say, we're not signing anything, we're not
Right.
committing to anything.
Right.
I would think that at least to do due diligence, to ask for a proposal from them would still be okay.
Yep. Do we have to give them, this was my question. Do we have to give them the parameters of exactly what we're looking for their proposal to come in?
They're good, that's what,
Or they're
That's
gonna
what
propose?
we
We
gave them a bunch of questions. We gave them
Okay.
all those questions and they talked to us here tonight and asked some questions. And then they're gonna kind of say, okay, you got all these questions all over the place. We're putting them in different
How much
buckets.
time study group.
Like
right,
Jim did in the great statement there, in kind of all those
Yeah.
different buckets. And then they're gonna say, this is how we recommend,
Okay.
what we recommend doing, this is what the cost is and how we recommend.
And we
getting
can
to
tweak
it.
from that.
And, and then the specifics of it, of course, are gonna develop as we go.
Sure.
Like, they're gonna say, well, we gotta look at this, but then how they end up looking at it may change as you do focus groups and realize that
Yeah.
there's other things that need to be thought about.
Okay.
Any other concern, administration, any other concerns? Thoughts? Ideas, ponders?
I think Russ will try to attend the July 9th. I don't know if he has it free. He said he would look into that. I do
I'm
think.
picking him up. He said he's in Halifax. I'm swinging by and grabbing him.
He's gonna be with me in negotiations.
Voluntarily or
so
involuntarily?
I'll make sure he comes. But he has done a lot of work with Mars and he has done a lot of regionalization agreements. So again, I think his insights would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, some of the questions are definitely Russ's questions.
Yeah.
And some of the things that we'll need along the way to
Yeah.
even to help inform probably the consultants. Because some of the questions hinge on legal, like the whole question about, wait, do we need to renegotiate all the agreements? He'll have the answers to help facilitate them putting that into a report.
Jill, do you think with Russ's familiarity with Mars, do you think he'd be able to give us a ballpark on cost estimate? Or do you think that's too premature? As far as seeing if Mars would even be in our ballpark?
I don't know that he himself he has worked with schools that have worked with Mars.
Gotcha.
I don't know that he would necessarily know what the schools were charged, but I can ask him.
Okay,
I still stand, I don't see that there's a real reason for us not to at least ask Mars to meet with us,
well,
other than I
just follow
guess
the
the whole
process.
thing. But we could put that request into them now and then later say, actually, we're good, we're going in another direction. There's no harm, in my opinion, in asking them or in trying to engage
I don't think
them.
we can just reach
I
out to Mars though. We have to do an RFP.
we have to do an RFP, solicit bidders.
It has to, yeah.
Go from there.
Which is a posting, isn't it?
Yep.
An RFP?
Yeah.
Yep. Public
After
posting.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Noticed, advertised.
All right, so I think we had a motion and a second on the floor, right? For a proposal, we did we vote?
We did,
I can't remember what I had.
Yeah,
for breakfast.
yeah.
Sorry,
Yay.
apologize. All right, and then the other thing, guys, we had on the agenda were approval of minutes. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes we had?
Yep.
My computer. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from May 13th, 2025 and June 9th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by John, seconded by Jeannie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Any other things before I ask a move to dismiss? Anybody? Speak now. Good. All right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, guys.